The McCain economic advisor, Douglas Holtz-Eakin, who we will hear from later on in claiming the senator invented the BlackBerry, incidentally, had this briefing in which he said, you should not run for president by trying to scare people, which is interesting by itself. But he emphasized that the McCain campaign would not be trying to write any legislation. It would be laying out guidelines for Wall Street. Is that not the essence of what the Bush administration has done for the last 7 years and perhaps why we are all where we are tonight?
Well, it was certainly their view until they started intervening very heavily in the struggling financial sector. I don't think they're issuing guidelines right now. They're taking extraordinary measures that, frankly, even the Clinton administration never did because they never faced this kind of crisis. But Holtz-Eakin is being true to their economic philosophy, which is guidelines. How are you going to issue guidelines to firms to curb excess corporate pay, for instance? It just cannot be done. So Holtz-Eakin is really telling the truth in terms of where McCain and Graham come from here. But again, it does not square with the kind of rhetoric, populist rhetoric, that McCain came up with today.
Last point, politics, pure and simple. This is not obviously Senator McCain's first experience with failing banks. Are the Democrats now going to start bringing in the Keating Five to this mix?
There was a long passage in Obama's speech today about the savings and loans crisis, and that was a clear nod to everything that came out of that, including Keating 5. They didn't use the words. They are debating whether or not they should. I suspect they will avoid it if they possibly can.
Richard Wolff of MSNBC and Newsweek in Los Angeles for us tonight. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Keith.
Senator McCain has other problems tonight. One of them is Governor Palin's sudden unpopularity. New polling concluding the almost impossible. Her favorable, unfavorable rating has dropped 10 points since Saturday. And one of the journalists accused over the years of being in the tank for McCain, writes Richard Cohen of the Washington Post today. Guilty, he confesses. It had to do with McCain's integrity, Cohen explains. It all unraveled for Cohen today. He turned him into little McCain pieces. Quotes, he has become the sort of politician he once despised. McCain has turned ugly. McCain lied about his lying, and once is a tragedy, a second time is farce. John McCain is both. Our fourth story in the countdown, Mr. Cohen never even mentioned Governor Palin. New polling on her suggests she has, in Newsweek's terms, gone, quote, from being the most popular White House hopeful to the least. As McCain and Palin took the stage together once more, this time in Vienna, Ohio, to plug their plans for fixing the economy, one of the campaign's top economic advisors essentially threw their touted business acumen under the bus.
Can I just ask you about an interview? I believe you did this today on KTRS Radio's McGraw-Hill show, and you were asked whether Sarah Palin has the experience to run a major company like Hewlett-Packard, which you did, and you said, no, I don't, but you know what? That's not what she's running for.
Well, I don't think John McCain could run a major corporation. I don't think Barack Obama could run a major corporation. I don't think Joe Biden could run a major corporation. But on the other hand, a major corporation is not the same as being the president or the vice president of the United States. It is a fallacy to suggest that the country is like a company.
She would know. She got fired from running that company. It's all very true. Running the country is a lot harder than running a company, and telling the truth, at least for Governor Palin, apparently is hardest of all. At a fundraiser at Canton, Ohio last night, the vice presidential nominee telling the crowd that during her lauded convention acceptance speech, quote, there Ohio was right out in front, right in front of me. The teleprompter got messed up. I couldn't follow it, and I just decided I'd just talk to the people in front of me. It was Ohio. Only one problem with that crowd-pleasing tale of quick thinking under pressure. It's not true. Reporters who could see the teleprompter during the governor's speech say there were no serious malfunctions with the machine, a fact backed up by convention organizers. Even more egregious than lying about the teleprompter working was what she actually read off that teleprompter, a quote by an unidentified writer praising President Truman for having been a small-town citizen. The writer was right-wing, McCarthyite, anti-Semitic columnist Westbrook Pegler, who once lamented a botched assassination attempt on President Roosevelt and who later wrote that he was hoping for the assassination of Senator Robert F. Kennedy. I'm joined now by the Washington editor for The Nation magazine, Chris Hayes. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Keith.
Let me start with this hotline polling that Newsweek summarized. It's stupefying. As of Saturday, people who viewed Governor Palin as unfavorable was 30%. Now it's 36% as of yesterday. As of Saturday, people who viewed her as favorable, 52%. Now it's 48%. She lost 10 points net in 3 days. How does anybody lose 10 points in favorability, popularity in 3 days?
I don't know. I mean, if I were a trader on Wall Street, I think I would be shorting Sarah Palin stock at this point. I mean, and I actually think that's, in some ways, an apt analogy. You know, clearly the Sarah Palin phenomenon is a bubble in a certain sense. It's like tech stocks. It's like the real estate market. There was a tremendous amount of interest and this kind of cascading positive feedback loop of coverage of her because of she was an appealing person. She clearly was charismatic. She was clearly bright, and she had this compelling personal story. She was new. She was fresh. All of that was sort of the most superficial things we knew about Sarah Palin. And then what happened, and what we've seen over the last week, is people are getting to know what kind of vice president or president Sarah Palin would make, and they are recoiling.
Is there something larger in play to this? I mean, who lies about a teleprompter? I mean, read your first major national speech. You're being nominated for the vice presidency, and you do it well off a fully functioning teleprompter. That's impressive enough.
Right,
but they had that prompter malfunction story out within 20 minutes. We ran it on this network. Why lie when you already got the A+?
I mean, it's a really bizarre lie, particularly given the fact that the press is sitting, and I was sitting, in the Excel Center in such a position that you can see the teleprompter scrolling and know that it's not malfunctioning. So it's so sort of easily verifiable that she's not telling the truth. But look, the Sarah Palin phenomenon is about a story about a person named Sarah Palin, right? It's not about the actual governor of Alaska. It's not about a real political figure. And so we've seen time and time again this need to preserve the initial story of the first few days, that she's a reformer, that she said no thanks to the bridge to nowhere, that she didn't want earmarks, that she improvised her speech at the RNC. All of these aren't true, right? But what they did was they chose a kind of narrative set piece when they chose Sarah Palin. They didn't choose the actual governor of Alaska. And so what they need to do is dig their heels in and just keep repeating this mythology.
I am waiting for she invented the BlackBerry. Oh, they used that already for somebody else. We mentioned this last night as it broke. Suddenly the governor has decided not to meet with the investigator in the Troopergate story. They say the political taint on this committee now is overwhelming, even though it's 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. How dumb is this? I mean, did she not just keep this story alive rather than making it like a one-day event later on down the trail? Didn't she just turn it into something that lasts until November 4th, presuming she lasts until November 4th?
Yeah, I mean, it's the oldest cliche in politics, right? It's not the crime, it's the cover-up, and that seems to be where this story is going. I mean, I don't know. If I was advising Sarah Palin from a purely political perspective, do you want this investigation to go forward, which looks like it would suggest or show that there was some interference in trying to get this person fired, or do you want to try to quash it? Clearly, they've gone for the latter, but then that just makes people think there's something to hide. So they're a little bit boxed in. The crazy thing is that, of course, one would think this is the type of thing that would come up in the vetting process. I don't know if they knew about it and just ignored it, or they figured they could sweep it under the rug. But clearly, they're going to, again, they're going to double down on that now.
The teleprompter malfunctioned during the vetting process, and nobody remembered what questions to ask. But they did a nice job of improvising the other ones. Chris Hayes of The Nation, as always, Chris, many thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
The governor did not get many favors done for her today when a conservative website suggested that the tanning bed she installed in her mansion might have been there as an antidote for depression. Wait, did you say Palin needs an antidote for depression?